Matt Foster has joined us. Welcome. This is the meeting host. We have opened the meeting and begun YouTube streaming, and all participations are recorded.
Anybody here?
Hi, it looks like I'm unmuted.
Yep.
Okay. So what I see on my screen is probably the same thing you see. I see, well, we're going to, only 2 people that I cannot tell if they're on. Okay, I got that one. Perfect. Well, it's 4:01 and it looks like we have everybody here. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to call this meeting to order. The caveat that we are on a new platform that we've never used today. So thank you all for being here and bearing with us. Suzanne, are you available and ready to do roll call? I would ask that I believe our host is going to unmute so that you have the ability to say yes when Suzanne calls your name. Okay, so I am unmuted. I can see that everybody, including the host, is still muted. So I'm looking for Suzanne.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, and at this point, the host needs to unmute all participants so that you can do roll call and they can say yes. Or I think you can unmute I think you might be able to unmute yourself one at a time. So Suzanne, if you want to call roll, let's see if that works.
Okay, Mrs. Calderwood,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Diedenbach,
Yes.
Ms. Horvath,
Yes.
Dr. Norton. Okay.
I saw him there, Suzanne.
Mr. Page,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Mr. Thomas.
okay,
Yes.
we see you waving. Mr. Wright.
Yes.
All righty, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and thanks everybody. If I could call on Jean Calderwood, who has graciously agreed to deliver the invocation over our WebEx meeting, that would be great. Thank you, Jean.
You are welcome. And thank you all for allowing me to do this. I am humbled by it. We could bow our heads in our own respective places. Dear Heavenly Father, we offer you the thanks that you are allowing us to humbly serve you in some small way, the citizens of this community and the travelers that come through our community. We thank you for your blessings and your grace. We ask that you guide us today in these what we would call difficult times, even though we all each are still very blessed. We ask that you guide our decisions, our thoughts, and ask that you give us the wisdom to make prudent decisions. We, as always, thank you for our staff. We thank them for their dedication and for allowing themselves to be out there and exposed to some of the dangers that we are faced with today. Please keep them and their families safe. We ask that you keep our travelers safe. We ask that you keep each of our board members and those guests with their families safe as well. Again, we thank you. We know we have difficult times. We know we will come out of this stronger. And we thank you for each of the blessings that you've given to us. Amen.
Thank you very much, Jean. That was very good.
You're welcome.
You all can see the flag behind Alan to make this official. If we can please say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Suzanne, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do.
Excellent. Host, if we could turn everybody's microphones on. We have our meeting highlights from March 26th, and I'm going to need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second. Craig Carter, second.
Yes.
I'm going to back up just a second. We have several motions on this. If you want to make the motion in a second, can you please state your name?
Jerry making a motion to approve.
Craig Carter, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have meeting highlights. I can't see who's on here, but if we are all unmuted, is there any citizens input at this time?
There are no citizens present in the boardroom, and we have not received any comments to our meetings at flygainesville.com email address.
Thank you for clarifying that, Suzanne. So being no citizens input, is there any airport authority input on non-agenda items today? Hearing none, we'll move on to an adoption of the agenda. I will need a motion, a second, and please say your name.
This is Bob Alma.
Carter.
I have a motion from Craig Carter, and can I have a second, please?
I'll second Page.
And Bob Page is a second. Any discussion on the adoption of the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed to this agenda? Okay, let the record show that the agenda was adopted. Moving on, we'll turn this over to you, Alan, for airport business.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll just start with some comments on the COVID-19 situation we're at right now before getting to the regular information items. Right now, no employees have called in sick due to flu-like symptoms. No employees have tested positive for COVID-19, and we don't know of any airline or TSA employees that have likewise been ill. Those employees that can continue to work from home. We continue to spend additional effort to clean touch surfaces, although human traffic through the terminal, as you know, is extremely light. We're operating with greatly reduced flight schedules and airline passenger loads. I'll go into some of the details of that. But really right now, in summary, at this time, Delta has 2 round trips to Atlanta. American has 1 round trip to Dallas and 2 to Charlotte. There are no Miami flights, and the American flight times are haphazard. They vary at this time. The weekend schedules are similar. The airlines were required to keep pre-COVID cities on the schedule according to the terms of the CARES agreements. So we've asked why the Miami flight is not being operated. American just, I guess, agreed to their package. So they may have done that prior to accepting the money, and we'll see what happens from this point. American took about $5.8 billion from the federal government. About 30% of that, or $1.7 billion, was in the form of a low interest loan. And the funds can be used for payroll and benefits, but does not include fuel, maintenance, rents and fees, only staff items. So, can I just get a show? Does everyone hear me all right? I should have asked that first. Okay, great. Delta, understand they've taken about $4 billion under similar terms. I don't know all the details of that. PSA screenings are down about 50 to about 56 people per day. A few of these are Tailwinds employees and airline crews. So you can see it's extremely light. That compares to about 812 screenings per day that we would do normally at this time. But the word from other airports is very similar. Everybody is at about 5% of traffic. Some vary, some less than 5, some a little more than 5. The parking lots averaged about 50 to 60 cars a day, and that's compared to what we would have expected of about 900 cars per day at this time of year. I'm continuing conversations with some of our airlines and tenants with respect to rent and fee abatements. We are awaiting, their money from the federal government. However, the airlines, the money that they're receiving is not allowed to go to be used for airline fees or airport fees. I'm sorry. Right now, Tailwinds, I know, has not received their PPP funds, and so I know that they are anxious to defer their rent at this time. Although we're not sure what we're going to be getting from the federal government, you got my email yesterday about the CARES grant. I don't expect, without a lot of congressional pressure and media pressure, that this is going to change. The CARES grants have gone out the door. We have received ours. As I said, we have a few days to return it, but I did at least get an answer from FAA that they're not going to hold us to that timeline. And I'll get into that a little bit more when we have the CARES grant acceptance or preliminary acceptance on the agenda today. Some of the things that I'd like you to consider, we don't need to make a decision, but I would like to get a sense of the board on this, is just in conversation, 90-day rent deferral for the airlines, for airline terminal space, with up to 18 months payback and interest after a year. This would be allowable under FAA guidelines, grant assurances, but it'd be a 90-day sort of forgiveness, or not, deferral, not a forgiveness, but a deferral. For the rental cars, they have a pretty high minimum annual guarantee that they pay to us monthly. So we would look to defer that for 90 days and to collect only the 10% fee on rental car gross concessions. And I'll give you all this in a handout, so that you can consider it later on. And also on the rental cars, a 90-day deferral of their counter rent with interest due after 1 year and payback within 18 months. Same thing with the airlines, payback within 18 months. The terminal advertising concession would be an abatement of that minimum annual guarantee, maximum annual guarantee for 90 days. Again, with their payment based on % of gross, within them showing us their revenue for that period of time. And we would look to discuss this with them at some point and then reevaluate it in about 60 to 90 days. So I think a lot of airports are going to be doing things differently, but I think giving the folks about a 90-day breathing space until we see what direction this is going to take and we know what our grants are going to be, I think is a fair place to start. But as I said, we've had no discussions with any of these folks at this time. Okay, in the meantime, we continue to maintain most of our staff. We had previously furloughed 2 part-time employees, and we've reduced the hours at of our curb security people at the curb. We have been maintaining our maintenance staff. We're utilizing them to take care of a lot of deferred maintenance that we find difficult to do with air traffic and parking traffic. So we're doing things like sealing the cracks, continuing in the parking lot that needed a lot of maintenance, doing tree trimming in the parking lot and getting rid of roots that are there. We've done quite a bit of crack filling on our main taxiway. We want to continue to do that probably next week. We've also been doing a lot of grading work on the airfield and some building and grounds work in general that's been difficult to do otherwise. So, okay, so if you have no questions on any of that or comments, then I can talk about the CARES funding and where we are on that one. Okay, well, hearing none then, as you know, we've been putting the pressure on quite a bit. We received about $3.1 million in CARES funding. Pretty much all of that was because of the number of emplanements we did. So we were left out in the cold on a portion of the funding that FAA, not Congress, but FAA determined went heavily toward airports with a lot of cash and no debt. Quite opposite of what was intended from every person that I've talked to. So 175 airports, I think I'd reported to you, not report unrestricted cash in their FAA Form 127. It's an annual reporting form. They chose to follow that up with audited data from their single audit, as did we. And those airports were completely left out of the funding picture for about half of the $7.4 billion that was to be given to airports. There is other funds that are also distributed, but the big part of it was at $7.4 billion. Half based on emplanements and a couple of formulas, and the other half based on cash and debt. FAA is not willing to really discuss or backtrack on this. I spent time with the ADO manager. They were completely left out of the process, our Orlando district office. I think his call to me was mainly to solidify relationships. You know, I said that would never change. We've had a great relationship with the airport district office. They had no play in this. This came directly from FAA upper management or the administration, and we really can't get a handle on where. You'll see that we've got to accept the grant for the $3.1 million. I'm sorry, was that a question? Okay, we've got to accept that grant, but I did write back to FAA that we want them to recalculate our grant based on our audited unrestricted cash of about $6.4 million. If I'd entered that into their calculation spreadsheet, that would have been about another $7.7 million for us that we would have gotten. Of course, if all airports did that, everybody's share would go down, you know, substantially, but we would have gotten more than what we have, and it would have been fair. The region has sent me a letter, an email back saying, hey, we're okay with the extension of time, but FAA headquarters was going to respond directly on, you know, my request to recalculate the grant. Meanwhile, we have been, you know, working very hard with our legislative team. I've talked to airports all over the country trying to determine whether they were doing likewise, and most of them are. And, you know, certainly there have been a lot of media reports that are starting to come out on that. So to me, it's an extreme embarrassment for the administration. I would think they would want to do something about it. And there are some of the airports that receive funding that have gotten the equivalent. There's one that had the equivalent of 50 years of operating revenue. It was a tiny airport that got around $17 million. Another airport that's owned by the federal government is Yellowstone, or at least it's, yeah, Yellowstone Airport has 2 employees, and they got the equivalent of $8.9 million per employee. And that's just part of it. If you had put $1 in that field, you would have gotten $17,540,000 in change. And 175 of us had nothing in that field. In Florida, there were 3 airports that missed out on this funding. It was us, St. Pete, Clearwater, and Panama City. other airports did have something in that particular field. So there really is no defense of this. I have asked our legislators to go on the record as to whether that's what they intended for this program. I've not received a response. I think we were owed a response to say, yeah, we did want to give airports that had a ton of cash and no debt a bunch of money. I don't think that's true of any of them, and I know it isn't. But I guess in this process, I'm more surprised with how, I hate to use the word impotent, the Congress is in terms of getting the administration or getting the executive branch. I don't even want to say the executive branch, but an agency to actually fulfill the terms of federal legislation. Because there's just no way that this follows the formula that was in the HR 748, the bill that made this money available. So it's still up in the air. And one thing that I didn't want to do was to really approach our media. I'm sure we will. It's a public meeting, and we're not certainly media. I think attention is important on this at the highest level, but we didn't go actively out and set a press release or do anything locally with the media. So, but we have had stories that are written, and we know it has the attention of some national publications. As to what they'll do with it, I don't know. So that's where we're at on that one. Certainly, and then I'll turn, Chairman Horvath or Chair Horvath, I know you wrote a letter. You might want to talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, Alan. First, what I'd like to say is you've done an incredible job on this. I don't know if anybody realizes that Alan was amongst one of the first airport executives to really analyze the allocations that were going to all the airports. The amount of work that he's done, the work that he's doing with the, it's the American Association of Airport Executives, Alan?
Yes.
So taking this to the national level, and I feel that he's really been part of uncovering the unfair allocation of these funds. And I want to commend you for not only doing such a good job to protect and support our own airport, but the industry as a whole. So good job. He had informed me of this when it came out. I went ahead and asked him. I wanted to make sure that it was the appropriate action to do, but wrote a very detailed letter to Yoho, Scott, as well as Rubio. And I would encourage each of you to do the same. I think we all have enough information in the reports Alan gave us that we are able to make to offer an educated opinion. And for me personally, I said that you're using the people's money, and I'm the people, and I'm a voter, and I believe that this needs to be redressed. So that's the way I handled it.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with airports, as I said, around the country. And, a lot of them are doing this effort. And I don't know that at this point, I think the FAA was hell-bent from the start at getting these grants out, regardless of how fair the process was. They knew that there weren't 175 airports that had no cash in their pocket, and that money or that information was available to them in their single audits that we send out to the FAA. So I don't know why this was done. I know, a lot of information that from folks that I've talked to on, some of it confidentially, but it definitely needs a spotlight put on it, and it needs to be fixed. And as I had said in my email to the associate administrator, is you can't fix this piecemeal. You can't try and get a little extra money to certain airports to make them go away. There's 175 of them, and they've been grossly mistreated in this process. And it's much easier and much better to just admit that, hey, we had a computer glitch. Hey, we made a mistake. to walk it back and do it right. They had the option to let a whole lot of this money out that was based on emplanements, which is very objective. Everybody knows exactly how many emplanements they did. And we would have gotten, pretty much what we got based on emplanements. And other airports would have gotten several months worth of funds to carry on through this problem, through the crisis. But for some reason, they absolutely did not want to do that because, it's obvious. And they use the excuse that, well, we already let the numbers out. Well, any airport that had 2 employees that got 17 or $18 million would know that this was manna from heaven and that this was not something they deserved, especially at the expense of other airports. And so I think it would have been easy to walk it back and tell people, hey, we made a mistake, it was a glitch. And they would have understood that, and then they would have got something that was fair. But for some reason, they have pushed forward. But do appreciate your support and anything that at this point you can do to shed light on it. The grants went out on Monday, and they had ample time from the time that they were alerted of this by me, by many others, I'm sure, through the American Association of Airport Executives and other airports that had, gotten wind of this. I'm still surprised. I was on the phone last night talking to an airport out in Nevada, and he was unaware. And so I've had others that were aware of what they got, but not aware of what the neighbor down the street got that was 17 or $18 million more than what they got, and why. So it was pushed out so fast, and I don't know if that was a strategy or not. I can't imagine why anyone would do this on purpose, but there you have it. It's been a slow build, and I think at some point it's going to reach a crescendo, and it's not going to look good for the federal government. I think that's about all I have on it until we get to the agenda item.
Would anybody like to make comment? I don't know if you all realize that you have a chat function down on your toolbar there. There's a conversation bubble. And if you click on that, a box will open on the side of your screen so that if you do have questions or you'd like to sort of virtually raise your hand, you can type your questions into that sidebar.
Let me make a quick comment to everyone, please. You may be noticing that your microphones are muted. That is because the YouTube needs to be displaying the current speaker. If other folks are speaking, it'll change up the display. Thank you for your patience. If you need to comment and can't, then get our attention with the chat. Thank you.
That's Keith, everybody. That is not Hal from 2001 Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Excellent report. Thanks.
Well, thank you. If nobody has any questions, then I'll go on to the regular report. Right now, on page 9, item number 2, the phase 2 terminal continues. Please remember that this project is 100% funded. So we have the FAA grants and we have the passenger facility charges in hand to complete that project. And we have a lot of state funding available that's going unused. It was going to go to future phases of the terminal. So we're in good shape there. Contractor is on schedule. Change orders have been very minor. The drainage system and site work have been completed except for some sodding. The concrete stem wall is up and they're getting the finished floor graded off right now. All the roughed in plumbing and electric is in. So we look to be having that finished floor poured on May the 1st. The fact that the terminal has been so empty has really helped the contractor in that we've been allowing them to install conduits that would have been done in the middle of the night up through the building. And they've been doing excellent work there, not disrupting us at all and doing it piece by piece. So a lot of that work is done. And right now, the roof is being redone, so that work has started. They've started taking the solar panels off the main canopy at the terminal, and they'll do that roof first. and then start on the rest of the. Alrighty. Phase 3 of the terminal is the boarding bridges. One thing that we did get out of this is that instead of a 90% FAA share on our fiscal year 2020 grant, we'll get 100%. That was part of the CARES package. And so that project will be funded at 100%. And those boarding bridges are going to be advertised on Sunday for bid on the 27th of May. Then we'll come back to you to approve the bids and to agree to submit a grant application to the FAA in June. Terminal Phase 4, which was the baggage handling system and airline office expansion and renovation. As you remember from that last month's meeting, that one is on hold. I did apply for an additional $3.1 million in FDOT strategic intermodal system funds. I have not heard back yet, but it's very soon to hear on that. That is 50% money. And we also had a conference call with the TSA to talk about grant funding opportunities through TSA. I do have the grant application forms. I do intend to submit a grant application. However, TSA is using all of that money from the federal government, which is a pot that does go to airports for security-related capital improvements. But they warned me that TSA has their own needs and they're using most of that money for themselves. And there's a long backlog of airports that would like funding. It was a good call. I mean, I had a lot of questions regarding that and the fact that we have a lot of matching funds to bring to bear, but they were very non-committal, but did encourage us to go ahead and submit the application and get in the queue. So if you have no objections, then we'll submit on that and see where it takes us. But my guess is it would be many years before funding would come through from TSA. They have a lot of machines of their own that they're looking to upgrade on security screening lines, and that seems to be, and bag scanners, that seems to be where they're spending the money. Alrighty. On page 12 is our GA Hangar Rehabilitation project. That one has really geared up. Air Methods Hangar, Hangar GA 22, is essentially done. We have some, I think the gutter and downspout work was done yesterday. I didn't get a chance to go over and take a look at it, but I believe Aaron told me that they were finishing that up. We did a walk through the hangar and there were a few minor punch list items. So that one's pretty close to being done. We got a little cleanup work around the hangar. Some dirt work that needs to be finished off and seated, but that may even have been done yesterday. I'm just a little out of the loop last couple of days. Hangar GA 25 is the Joint Aviation Unit, and they've been operating out of the Silver Airways, former Silver Airways hangar. That building has been painted inside and out. It's got a new steel roof on it. Gutters and downspouts were supposed to be going in yesterday, and new storm drainage system. Still an issue with the electrical panels with city permitting. We may have to install more disconnect switches than what we had originally had in the drawings. Something GRU is insisting on. We're supposed to be a meeting this afternoon to try and hammer that out. But the project is moving along fairly well. Our own people are redoing the bathroom down there, and it's looking like a whole new hangar. So the new office trailer is in, and we'll be working on the new lease with them so that we can get that finished up here shortly. Hangar GA2, that's the World War II hangar over at University Air Center. The work has begun over there. Got off to a bit of a slow start because of the rain, but they've been prepping the interior steel inside for painting, and they've been working on the exterior walls. The roof coating has been completed, I believe, if not yesterday, then early today. And UAC currently is housing their airplanes in the Silver Hangar and other places. We're trying to get that work ramped up, but the contractor still has a lot of work to do, lighting, electrical panels. And one issue with that is the old windows that are in the hangar. We had expected just to repoint that glass, and it's looking like we may have to do a window replacement over there. I'll keep you informed on that, but we're trying to look at different options to keep the costs down on that one. Other than that, those hangars are going along pretty well, and we're going to have to work very hard next week to try to get some of our T-hanger tenants out so that we can get on the first T-hanger when that hangar is finished. I believe that's pretty much it in terms of information items other than the traffic. I really didn't plan to go into the actual traffic numbers since they are effectively close to zero. In talking to our airline managers, our typical load right now is single digits on Delta and low teens on American on these flights. They vary. Might be 5 to 7 passengers for Delta and 7 to 13, 14, 15 on American. And they have to keep those routes going because of the care money that they've received. So really not much sense to drill down into those. It's a disaster any way you look at it. And you can see reports all over the country on large airports that we're doing tens of thousands of people a day and are down to hundreds. It's just a sad situation. And with that, Madam Chair, those are the information items.
Questions or comments on the president's report?
Y'all can pull under the carport if you want to, so
I just tried to unmute only Matt, and all of them got unmuted.
Everyone is muted right now. They need to
Hey.
vote.
Okay.
it feels like a hurricane out here.
Seem to be picking up somebody's conversation.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey.
Keeping all our social distancing.
There you go. Thanks. So Matt, do we have you on the line here to deliver the finance report for us?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Matt, are you on the line? Okay, Madam Chair. Well,
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Matt. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to the middle of page 25. I'll quickly summarize the actual versus budget for the month of March. Total revenues were $531,000 as opposed to $586,000 budgeted, and that's about $55,000 under budget. Most of that is a result of the parking being down. Total expenses for the month is $420,000 as opposed to $439,000 budgeted, and that's a little over $19,000 under budget. Net revenue for the month is $96,000 as opposed to about $130,000 budgeted, and that's $34,000 under budget for the month.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Does anybody have any questions for Matt on the financials?
Kenan here, move to accept the report, please.
Thank you, Kenan. Can I get a second, please?
That was Craig.
Craig Carter, you seconded.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion on the financials? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is anyone opposed to accepting the financials?
They did this,
Bill, did you put your phone on mute? Okay, motion carries, financials are accepted. Moving on to we have a resolution to move on to. Alan, if you want to host, if you want to put us all on mute again, except for Alan, that'd be great.
all right, thank you. So this is resolution number 20-005. That's for your acceptance of the FAA CARES grant in the amount of approximately exactly $3,113,693. This is still a fluid situation, but in the federal legislation, this money was supposed to be used or available to be used for any legal purpose. So it can be used to pay utility bills, payroll, any operating expenses. For those airports that were lucky enough to get a giant windfall, it could actually be used for capital expenditures and other purchases. But in our case, that would most likely be used for expenses. However, you have that option. And so, as I said, we haven't gotten our official rejection or word from FAA on any adjustment to this, but we didn't want to run out of time. Time does not seem to be as big an issue, but I'm sure they will be expecting a grant back before our May board meeting. So we wanted to get your initial acceptance of this, and we will submit the paperwork to FAA for this money at the latest possible time.
Kennan here, move approval of resolution 20-005.
I'll second that.
That's Jerry. Any further discussion? I do have a question, Alan. If we accept this, is that in any way going to be interpreted as a final acceptance that will then not be reviewed?
Well, that was the reason for delaying this. I would certainly go on the record in submitting the application that we protest and disagree with the amount that was given, and for the same reasons that I've gone over, and that we would expect that the FAA would revisit this and add to the grant whenever funds would be made available.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay, so this is going to be a roll call vote. If we want to unmute our board members, and Suzanne will call the roll.
Okay, Mrs. Calderwood,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad, Mr. Conrad, no. Mr. Diedenbach,
Yes.
Dr. Norton, Mr. Page,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
and Ms. Horvath.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, Alan, thank you for doing a good job on this. We're in good hands. Moving on to the tenant report. We have somebody from University Air. Are you on the line, Debbie?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for inviting us and calling on us. I wish I had more exciting news to share. Our fueling remains down. We're down 80%, which is about average with what we're seeing from other FBOs that share our fueling applications. Our charter business has rebounded somewhat, only down about 35 to 40%. And we've seen a surge over the last couple of weeks. We think that the hospitals have kind of gotten comfortable with protocols, and now they're starting to fly transplant missions and go back there. One of the things that's frustrating for us is our military has not been coming in. We haven't fueled a military aircraft since the 18th of March. They come and land and stay out on the compass rose, and then they leave. And we had heard that they had been told only to fuel at their military bases, that they can come here and, you know, do practice missions, but then they don't stop in for fuel just in the abundance of safety. So today we reached out to several folks that we know through our association with the Tailhook Association and, you know, asked them to spread the word that, you know, we're here, we're open, we're taking all the appropriate precautions. So hopefully we will see some of those military aircraft come in for fueling. And cross countries have been put on hold until mid-June. So we know that the major influx of, you know, entire classes flying in, that will be down for the remainder of this month and next month. But we anticipate that they will be able to be back in June. And in the meantime, we were able to secure a PPP loan. So our staff is making the very best use of the time that they have. I think we have compounded and waxed and washed every piece of ground service equipment that we have. Our fuel trucks are glistening and gleaming. We've cleaned out storage rooms and worked on a lot of projects that, you know, were those, we'll do that when we have some time, and now we have some time, so we're knocking them out. And, you know, we're taking all of the appropriate precautions, but we sure are ready to have a little bit more normalcy come back into our world. That's all that I have. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Debbie, thanks for that report, and we hope you're doing well.
Thanks.
Moving on, is there any further airport authority input? I can see that if you look in your report, everybody's great on attendance. So if there are no further items, we will call this meeting adjourned at 4:47. Thank you so much, everybody, for your patience and your willingness to try the platform. I want to thank Suzanne and her team and Keith for getting this platform up and running for us. I think we did a good job. Thank you very much, Alan.
Great job. Stay safe. Everybody be safe.
Everyone, be well.
Take care.
And we end the meeting.
Well.